Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this month's Audio Production Town Hall. My name is Brian Smithers, and I'm the Program Director of Audio Production here at Full Sail. We're glad you could join us today. Every month, you'll find us here weighing in on all sorts of issues that are of interest to audio production students. We've talked about drum miking and mixing and mastering. We've talked about the business of dance music. We've featured new software and hardware, and a lot of really cool people. So keep an eye on FS1 for every month's upcoming Audio Production Town Hall, and we hope you will make a habit of joining us here. This month we're talking to a 2015 graduate of Full Sail, Alexandria Perryman. Alexandria is a producer at Will Media, which is a major podcast production company, but before that, she was an audio engineer at NASA. Alexandria, welcome. We're glad you could join us today.
Thank you for having me.
When you graduated, as I recall, you moved home and started looking for work and saw an ad from an unlikely place called NASA. Do I have that trajectory basically right so far?
Pretty much right. There was a little gap where I worked in a recording studio for that, but yeah, that's pretty much how it went.
So one of the things that's always fascinated me about that fact is that we covered a lot of ground while you were a student here. We talked about digital audio, we talked about microphones and mixers, we talked about making records, and we talked about sound for film and television. But I don't recall us ever talking about sound for astronauts. Do you?
No, that definitely did not come up.
So to me, one of the great lessons that you embody is the fact that you really immediately recognized all of the way that your training and skills would transfer into the environment of working for a space agency.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it came from how I learned as a student. The way Full Sail was modeled is every class builds upon each other. So I took that in the workforce, that same concept, that same mindset. So I went from working in a recording studio, learning from that. Then I did part-time AV work at different hotels. Then I volunteered doing the live broadcast for my church. And then I was able to just mix all those things together. So when I saw the job posting for NASA, it listed what they wanted you to have. And I had touched on every single one of those things, whether it's for space or not, it's still audio being pushed through a console.
That's great, because you're absolutely right. We try to build one brick at a time in terms of your knowledge and skills, and your entire career ends up being that same sort of process of learning some new things and improving the things that you already know and are able to do, and being prepared to take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves. While you were at NASA, what were some of the first things that they asked you to do?
One of the first things I was doing, which is kind of incredible that you'll have somebody new touching old audio tape that had never been heard before. And so I had to digitize and archive those audio tapes. So I was actually working with old tape machines. I think NASA still has it. They had the second ever. It was like a dual audio tape recorder from like the 60s. And they have the second one and I think it's the only one that's left in the world that actually works. So I had to use that machine to replay these tapes and to push that old audio, crunchy audio that was stored behind the stage in a box and try to digitize that through Pro Tools. And wow. So that was really my first task for the first couple of weeks. And then I was shadowing folks, and then I got thrown into the fire and started mixing shows.
What was on those tapes? What were they actually recordings of?
Usually it was mission control, just their inner talking to each other from seat to seat. Sometimes you'll get calls where they're talking to at that time from the space shuttle or some of the Apollo missions. You would hear those audio tapes, but it was a lot of things that people that were listening on TV wouldn't have heard. The internal conversations where they were problem solving something, talking about their lunch. They were very lax in those days. So you hear conversations about what movie they just went and saw. Like I heard one of them talking about when the first Star Wars movie came out and how they were excited to go see it. And I was like, wow, this is crazy.
Wow. So Mission Control are sci-fi nerds. That's, I guess, not surprising
Definitely.
at all. What did you end up calling the podcast?
It's called Houston, We Have a Podcast.
And one of the all-time great podcast names.
Yeah, it's perfect.
When we were talking earlier, before we went on the air, you had talked about the mixing and mastering process. Probably hasn't occurred to most of us that there is a mastering step to podcasting. Can you talk a little bit about what that entails in this context?
Yeah, so for that, you just want to make sure that you're hitting like loudness standards for podcasting, which is different from music, which is different from a lot of things. So that way, whenever someone's listening to it on Spotify or Audible or Apple Podcasts, that it's coming through clearly and everything is mixed the way that you want. The intro music is not too loud. So that's what it comes to when you're doing the mastering process, making sure that the loudness standards and I think Apple is very specific about it. So you may have to, make sure that you're hitting those meters, or else sometimes they won't push your podcast out if it sounds bad.
Yeah. By the way, if anybody has any questions, please type them into the chat, and we'll read them out so that Alexandria can directly address your questions. And in the few minutes that we have remaining, I'd like to talk to you about something that you and I have discussed. Obviously, you have been a woman in what is absolutely a male-dominated industry for your entire career so far. At our Hall of Fame this year, we had 3 men and 3 women being inducted. Each of the 3 women talked about the specific hurdles that they had faced as women getting started in their career in their industry. And I was both inspired and flabbergasted that in the span of their careers that this had actually been a thing and that it is still a thing. So can you speak to us about your experience or about some of the groups that you're working with to try to raise some awareness here?
Yeah, the audio world is definitely a boys' club, but I think I like the trajectory that it's going. There's the Women in Audio mission. There's Sound Girls that I've luckily been a part of. I found out about Sound Girls while I was a student, and just go on their Facebook in the groups where you can find different gigs. You can ask questions in a safe environment where you're not, you try to ask questions in some of these other platforms as a woman, and the attacks are just immediate from people behind the keyboard. So just finding those safe places and connecting. And so also in the world of podcasting, there's a lot more women that are doing it. Depending on what you're trying to do, it's something that one person can do by themselves. So the person that's creating that podcast, if you want to be the host of it, you can do that. It's a lot more easier for you to get your fill in there, and it's a lot easier with so many people and how big the podcast world is blowing into. There's a lot of opportunity for women audio engineers to start their own, do freelancing for other folks where you don't have to be in their face. You can just collect their audio files, mix it, and send it to them right from your house. I mean, I didn't have to deal with a lot as a woman. There was definitely those, oh, can she do this? Can she do that? My main barrier, funny enough, was my age. There was a huge age gap when I got hired on at NASA between me and my coworkers by a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot of us, like, there's the adult room and there's me, this 22-year-old kid just there. And so a lot of mine was just, a lot of the barriers I built was that I hadn't built up that trust yet with them because I was so young, because I was so green in the industry. It's like, oh, she came here straight from school. She doesn't know anything. She's super green. But doing what you are tasked to do to your best of your ability is the easiest way to stop it.
We do have a comment from our audience, so go ahead.
This person is wishing everyone good luck with everything. You are such an inspiration. And then they ask, have you any thought about, or have you put out any training showing others how to do this job from home?
That's a really good question. I have in the past done free videos. When I worked at NASA, I would do a Facebook Live sometimes and show my setup of what I'm doing for that, but I haven't done it yet for podcasting. That would be a different technical task, trying to set that, because I'm not really using a board. I'm just using my computer, but maybe something where I could like record editing something or using different tools, or like setting up something and then posting it out later. something that I probably can do in the near future.
We're so grateful for your time and you sharing your experience with us. We're so proud of the work that you've done.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
That wraps it up for today. Remember that we are here every month, ordinarily Monday of week 4. So keep an eye on Wholesale 1 for what's coming up from one month to the next. We'd like to thank the Audiovisual Technologies class here in the show production program and their course director, John Cost, for providing all of our production support. It's been a great pleasure working with you all, and we really appreciate the time, effort, and care that you put into us. That's us for this month. Hope you have a great afternoon, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next month.